Good morning to you all. I want to thank you for your prompt response to this, our invitation for the press, for this very important press briefing. As has been indicated by my director of the National Communications Officer, today we are departing from prepared script because of the nature of our conversation. We have sent a letter to the Commonwealth Secretariat complaining about certain issues bordering on good governance. And we just want the press to know. And so the purpose here is not to read a prepared script, but to give you copies of the document. And then if you have any issues relating to the matters we are complaining about, you may seek clarification from us. The reason why we have sent this petition to the Commonwealth is not to suggest that we are not an independent country, but rather all independent countries by choice seek membership of some international organizations whose aims and objectives they buy into. And we all know that the Commonwealth of Nations is a group of democratic states, democratic sovereign states, who believe in the tenets of good governance. And so membership necessarily must mean that the various states must practice what the Commonwealth believes in. So if you are a member of the Commonwealth of Nations and you deviate from those practices of good governance, there are structures that we can trigger to draw your attention to those deficits in your democratic practice. And in the worst case scenario, you could be suspended from the Commonwealth, as we saw Zimbabwe and other countries at one time or the other having been sanctioned by the suspension. So we have seen that some practices of bad governance in Ghana of late seems to contradict the core beliefs of the Commonwealth. And so we have written to the Secretary General of Commonwealth, drawing her attention to those lapses. So our government can be called to order, and so that the right things must be done in the country. So I'll proceed to just read the background to the issues that we have complained about, mention a couple of them, and then once you have copies of the petition, you may wish to interrogate any issue we have complained about which you want further clarification. Ghana became a member of the Commonwealth of Nations in 1957 under the leadership of its first president, His Excellency President Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Since then, Ghana has been an active member of the Commonwealth of Nations, committed to its ideals and values. In 1991, the Commonwealth, pursuant to its recognition of the principle of good governance as the cornerstone of peace and stability, issued the Harare Declaration, which, among other things, recognized the liberty of the individual under the law, in equal rights for all citizens regardless of gender, race, color, creed, or political belief, and in the individual's inalienable right to participate by means of free and democratic political processes in framing the society in which he or she lives. Unquote. The NDC, as the largest opposition party in Ghana, has a huge stake in the success of Ghana's democracy. The founder of the NDC, His Excellency President Jerry John Rawlings of blessed memory played a pivotal role in ushering Ghana into her fourth attempt at democratic rule in 1993. For this and other reasons, the NDC has remained steadfast and committed to Ghana's democracy and the ideals and values for the Commonwealth, I beg your pardon. It is important to note that since 1993, the presidency of Ghana has alternated between the NDC and the New Patriotic Party. Currently, Ghana has a hung parliament with both the MPP and NDC having 137 members of parliament apiece. His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was elected the President of Ghana in 2016 and re-elected to serve a second term of office in December 2020. As the presidential candidate of the MPP before the 2016 general elections, then candidate Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo preached violence and mayhem if he did not win in 2016 presidential elections. Since assuming the reins of power in 2016, the message of fiscal violence against political opponents that President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo preached had preached and championed before the 2016 general elections has turned into structural, institutional, and systematic forms of violence in the form of human rights violations, harassment, and political persecutions against members and supporters of the National Democratic Congress. Significantly, buffer institutions such as the judiciary, whose core mandate is to mediate between the interests of opposing parties and ensure the promotion of the rule of law and individual liberties, have become systematically enfeebled with attendant loss of public confidence in these institutions. A recent African Barometer survey report for Ghana indicates that over 84% of Ghanaians do not consider the judiciary to be impartial. And this is very, very serious for any democracy. The image of the judiciary has been further dented by the delivery of unreasoned court judgments which read more like partisan or polemical pieces than learned judicial reasoning consistent with judicial standards in the legal system of common law countries. And by common law countries, we refer to those countries who belong to the Commonwealth and practice the common law tradition. In one such court opinion, a judge presiding over a criminal trial involving the prosecution of a member of NDC simply ruled that the application had been brought in bad faith and dismissed without more. It is in the light of the preceding observations that we provide below instances of human rights violations, harassment, and criminal persecutions of the NDC by the government of Ghana. And we had explained and categorized cases that we have issued with. We mentioned the case involving Dr. Opuni, where we believe that mostly all the judgments that have been delivered ran against the principles of common law practice and good governance. We have seen a situation where a judge's pronouncements in open court seem to suggest that Dr. Opuni is guilty even before his case is heard. And we think that this is against the core principles of fair trial and then common law practice, where individuals before the court are presumed innocent until proven guilty. We have a situation where pronouncements in open court seem to suggest that a judge is already biased, and in an attempt to make sure that the judge recuses himself from the case, all attempts have been made by government to insist that a judge who clearly have compromised himself is made to sit in the case. And so we don't think that Dr. Opuni is likely to have justice. And we have gone to the highest court of the land. There have been initial judgments followed, which suggested that clearly that judge could not sit on the case. We thought that a government that is, interested in free and fair trial would accept it and get another judge to deal with the case. But strangely, that judge has been forced on the court, and then is handling the case the way we think will not deliver justice to Dr. Opuni. We have statements and rulings in some of the judgments that have been delivered by this judge, and you can find them in the cases. I would maybe refer to one of these. All these were perpetrated to facilitate the second and third accused business and defraud Cocoa Board. Indeed, these acts were all perpetrated to facilitate and intentionally, voluntarily to aid the second and third accused to perpetrate fraud on Cocoa Board by supplying a different product from what was tested and approved. The matter before the court is to determine whether indeed Dr. Opuni had defrauded Cocoa Board. He was yet to open his defense, and these are the pronouncements that a judge who is going to sit on the case made. So it meant that Dr. Opuni has already been judged guilty before he will be tried and heard. There are other statements. You may, when you have the copies, you may look at it and maybe pass your own judgment. Then comes the case of the Republic versus Samuel Fusampofo and Anthony Kwaku Boahen. You all understand the background because you were with us at the by-election theater where tax were unleashed on innocent citizens and Ghanaians who were going about their duty of performing functions during a by-election. People were shot and maimed. The President of the Republic promised that this matter will be dealt with, established a commission of inquiry. The commission has since produced the report recommending certain things to be done to make sure that those who have suffered at least will be compensated, and that things that have gone wrong, the people who have committed wrongs in those theaters will be dealt with according to the beliefs of our Commonwealth traditions. What we have seen rather has been that the chairman of our party, in performing his fatherly role as a peacemaker, who, in order to avoid further bloodshed, decided to disengage the party from the by-election theater, eventually found himself to be the person who will be pursued by this government in court. So far, he has had close to 70 appearances in court. And where you have, he's alleged to have made some statements. The person who is supposed to have tendered in a witness statement came to declare that he knew next to nothing about the contents of the statement, and yet you still a journalist, and you still have our national chairman always going to court together with the deputy director of communications. We view this as clear case of political persecution, because a minister of state serving under President Akufo-Addo, who came to own up and declared that he was responsible for deploying that illegal army to go and shoot at people indiscriminately, slap a member of parliament, and did many other, undescribable acts of violence. As it's walking free, nothing has happened to him. And the individuals who appeared before the commission, some even apologized for the wrongs they have done. Government proceeds to issue a white paper to clear all of them that they did nothing wrong. Meanwhile, the peacemaker who took actions to prevent further bloodshed is languishing in court and has so far made close to 70 appearances in court. We think that this deviates clearly from Commonwealth standards, and we should not maintain our membership and continue to perpetuate bad governance that runs counter to the core beliefs of the Commonwealth of Nations. We also, because when this violence occurred at Ayawaso West Wogon, there were open statements, public statements, that Ayawaso was a dress rehearsal for what will happen in 2020 elections. Because nobody was brought to book concerning Ayawaso West Wogon, true to their word, this same tax descended at various election theaters during the 2020 elections, shot at innocent citizens, and the last count was that 8 innocent citizens lost their lives. As we speak now, absolutely nothing has happened to the perpetrators of these heinous acts. No comment. Government communication itself, particularly, there is no communication from the President of the Republic condemning these acts which run counter to the principles of the Commonwealth of Nations, and they expect life to continue as usual. Our fear is that if the Commonwealth does not demonstrate that it stands by its core principles, and that if you belong to the Commonwealth of Nations, you are bound to abide by those principles, there will be worse things happening in the subsequent elections. Commonwealth of Nations believes in free, fair, and transparent elections. Commonwealth believes in the right of citizens to elect their own representatives. As we speak to you now, for the first time in the history of this country, you conduct elections in a country and the whole area does not have representation in parliament at all. Just by issuing a letter the evening before the elections to that area that they will not be allowed to participate in the elections from the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. They have since remained unrepresented as we speak now. And we don't know their status, whether they are part of Ghana, and if so, is our parliament properly constituted according to Commonwealth standards? We don't know. And we think that this cardinal sin must not remain. It has to be corrected. And so, apart from this, there's a case of Dr. Kisel Atoforsen, who has been very persistent in calling government to account for financial malfeasance and making sure that if government does not account for its stewardship, then it will be difficult for the nation to contribute further resources by way of taxation to that government that has declared itself unaccountable to the citizens. From nowhere, charges have been trumped up and put on this honorable member, and is now, before the courts. If you take the case of media practitioners, Commonwealth believes in right to information, freedom of the media, and so on. Now, all the indications about media practice in Ghana is that media is being harassed and clamped down. You have a situation where in one soup, more than 100 radio stations were closed down selectively because it is the belief that these radio stations were not singing the praises of government. You have a case where a media practitioner, an investigative journalist, who had produced a documentary that was damning against the government, was threatened with death and eventually killed. As we speak now, that case has not found any justice, and nobody knows how the case is being dealt with. You have the case of social media activists who are arrested and taken to unknown places and kept for weeks without any information to their relatives about their whereabouts. And you have the case where social media, at least one social media activist has been clamped down and killed, and youth in his community tried to demonstrate their anger, and in the course of the demonstration, government orders soldiers to shoot at these demonstrators, and at least 2 of them lost their lives. As we speak here, the only action we have seen from the side of government is to proceed to arrest the brother of the social media activist who has been called, and charges trumped up and placed on him. He still has not had his day in court. He's being kept by government, and nobody knows how the case is proceeding. We can mention them, we can go on and on and on and on and on. And so you have somebody who's been arrested for preaching about coup d'etat or whatever. That person must be sent to the appropriate court. Government knowingly will always present him to the wrong court, which has no power to grant him bail. And he's still languishing in police cells. I mean, we think that this is not the standard of good governance that Commonwealth practices. And if you are a member of Commonwealth and you are practicing these acts of bad governance, it is up to us citizens to draw the attention of the organization. The government may proceed to do what they want, but if they believe in the ideals of Commonwealth, then they must necessarily run their affairs according to the core beliefs of Commonwealth. Ladies and gentlemen, I will end here, and whilst you have copies of the document, you may, also find, you may file questions, queries for further explanation. So having stated this, the particulars of our appeal is this, that the actions of the government of Ghana create conditions that threaten Ghana's political stability and further erode our democratic values. It is very unfortunate that after riding on the high horse and banner of a human rights activist, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has become a democratic despot who brooks no opposition. The petitioner believes that in line with the objectives of the Commonwealth of Nations and the Harare Declaration, it is appropriate that we address this petition to this honorable body. The persecutions, threats, and killings of supporters of members of NDC violate the values and objectives of the Commonwealth and will create conditions that will threaten and jeopardize the peace and security of Ghana. We humbly request that the Commonwealth of Nations, through your good offices, to 1. Closely follow the political and human rights situation in Ghana, since the promotion and protection of human rights, democracy, and fundamental freedoms is a core value of the Commonwealth. 2. Send a team to investigate the matters raised in particular, and send a team of lawyers, judges, and legal experts to assess the adequacy and quality of the justice being administered to members of the NDC who are facing criminal prosecutions. 3. Continue to engage with the government of Ghana and support and encourage their pursuit of accountability for the perpetrators of the Ayawaso West Wogon constituency by-election violence and the gruesome state-sponsored killings of 8 innocent Ghanaians during the 7th December 2020 general elections. Monitor the human rights situation in Ghana and the criminal persecution of members of the NDC. Engage with a broad range of actors, including government officials, political parties, representatives of civil society, to respect, promote, and protect human rights in Ghana, and call upon the government of Ghana to put a stop to these persecutions, harassments, threats, and killings of supporters and members of the National Democratic Congress. We haven't mentioned all of them, but this is just about the summary. We have had cause to complain about the harassment of lawyers who are perceived to have sympathies with NDC. They are dealt with according to different standards as lawyers who support other political party, particularly the ruling government, by the General Legal Council. And we think that in the coming days, we would be holding further press conferences and take other democratically but unspecified actions to ensure that there will be, rule of law in this our dear country. Thank you very much.